Hello, and welcome to the Riverfront Reds Show, where this week we ponder just where did my golf ball go? Alongside first ever appearance by my friend and yours, Paul Barnes, I am Seth Shaner. Paul, I got to hit the links today, and it is warm out here in Central Ohio.
I was going to say, how did you shoot today? Hit them straight?
Off and on.
You're pretty consistent. You're a consistent player, and you don't lose many golf balls. That's my forte.
Lost 2 today. That's the upsetting part.
Oh, I lose 2 on a hole, so that's not bad.
Now, everybody on the Riverfront in our Patreon group that's regular listeners and viewers of the show, Paul and I work together. We call high school football games for Bishop Watterson High School and basketball here in Columbus, Ohio. Paul is a lifelong Reds fan, and as you can see from behind him, he's a lot like I am as far as our Ohio State loyalties go. Hopefully, some of the UC fans and maybe the fans south of the Ohio border don't hold that against us too much. But Paul, as we get started today, we have a lot to talk about with the events of the week, the trip to Fenway, which was really cool to see on television for me. But I wanted to start the show this week talking to you a little bit about something, and I'm ambushing you a little bit. I want to talk about fanhood a little bit. And, you and I are very devout supporters of our favorite teams. And I want to tell you something. I don't know if I've ever told you, and I'm gonna let everybody out there hear this. So Paul's the type of guy, when things aren't going well with a favorite team of ours, I'm going to hear about it from you, aren't I?
Yes, most definitely.
So I get a text message. Yeah. I get a text message, and quite often, and Paul, I've known you for years, even going back to, like, I'm saying 2010 or so, when we would start to text a little bit. I used to refer to you to my wife as my grumpy friend Paul.
Get off my lawn guy, right? Something like that.
Yeah, because let me tell you, Paul wears his heart on his sleeve when it comes to his fanhood, and so there's all kinds of different fans out there, right? A lot of times I view my job as my friend group and my family as being the more reasonable, like let's wait and see type fan, right?
Sure.
But then sometimes
marinate. You're the let it marinate guy.
Yeah, but sometimes I get pretty hot as well. So, yeah. But what do you think? Your life as a fan, you kind of torture yourself a little bit, don't you?
As I've gotten older and surpassed age 50, I've kind of mellowed out a little bit. But if you go back 10 years, yeah, you're right. And the Reds are right up there with. Sometimes I get frustrated, and as we've seen the last few years, there's a lot of moments for frustration being a Reds fan. But I just live and die with my teams, and I care. I want them to win. It's that simple. Obviously, you can't win all the time, and you need to understand that sometimes in these. Well, with the Reds especially, there's always a rebuilding project, it seems, or at least the last few years there have been. And you just got to be patient. And so I've learned, I guess, the last couple of years to be a little more patient. Those texts to you have gone down a little bit, haven't they?
They've gone down in number, and they've gone down in vitriol as well. They're not as vitriolic. Yeah. Right. No, and it's fine. I just wanted to bring that up. But I will say, there comes a time, and even on the bottom of the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, you see how to become a Patreon member. Even in our Slack channel that is exclusive to the Patreon membership, even though we try our best to be level-headed and to not be, kind of be as toxic maybe as what you'd find on social media with each other, sometimes the patience just wears thin, especially with this Reds bunch these last several years. So at some point we need to vent to someone, don't we?
I guess so. And I guess the reason I send you texts and things like that is I'm not active on social media. I don't have a Twitter page. I'm not really on Facebook Messenger or whatever that much. But so I guess I send my feelings, not always good, to you. You bear the brunt of it.
I do.
I live and die, each game. I'm not patient. There's 162 games. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But I'm sure there's lots of fans on the Riverfront, the Patreon, that are loyal viewers and listeners of yours that would empathize with my situation, I would think.
Sure.
I would hope.
Well, the one I remember the most, though, was on Facebook. I remember I was at my in-laws' house in Dayton watching Ohio State basketball play years ago, and they were playing IUPUI, which should not have been a tough game for them, but it became closer than it should have been, and Jared Sullinger had 40 points. And I think they ended up winning by 8-10, or maybe even a little more in double digits. But it was close throughout. It shouldn't have been as close, and I would never say it should have been that close. But the funny thing was, I was like marveling over this performance by Jared Sullinger, and I posted something on Facebook, and I checked the comments, and there you are saying he should have never had to score that many. They never should have been that
Right.
close.
They're playing ooey pooey. Come on.
And I guess I just, it's times like that I think, boy, everybody in the world looks at things differently.
I guess so. Everyone has their own prism, especially when it comes to sports.
That's right.
Fanaticism, I guess you could say, right?
But then I guess at the end of the day, since you kind of let your feelings out a little more often, maybe guys like me who honestly, it happened to me at the end of the Ohio State regular season football last year. I was at that Michigan game in the very cold temperatures, and I had enough, man. I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm not going to give up on my team, but I was as mad as I've ever been after that game. And I think it's partially because I always look for the good, and then it just boiled over.
We kind of flip roles. At that moment, everything seemed lost. But I guess in retrospect, with the ability to look back now, that loss to Michigan might have been the thing they needed to spur them on. Who knows?
That's true. That's true. All right, back on the tracks. We are not an Ohio State show. We are a Cincinnati Reds show. Let's talk a little bit about the news of the week before we get into that Red Sox series. Sam Mull made his triumphant return to the Reds after being demoted earlier in the season. He wasn't effective in spring training or the very early part of the season. He pitched 2 innings, gave up 0 runs, and he had 4 strikeouts, a career high for him. My only joke, if we're going to go negative, would be that's about the time Nick Krall says, see, he's just as good as a trade.
Well, that's Nick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
I did catch a little bit of his outing, and he looked sharp. I mean, but it's one outing, but who knows? Maybe he tweaked some things down in the minors, and we got regauged some things, or just recalibrated, if you will. The guy that they would need going forward.
Yeah, they need that lefty. Taylor Rogers isn't as effective left on left as you'd hope, and they just don't have that side in the bullpen nailed down. 2 other good as a trade candidates are Hunter Green and Graham Ashcraft. They both threw simulated BP outings against their own teammates, and I guess like a trainer or somebody stepped in. That was kind of weird, but they had good reports and should soon be gearing up toward a future return. My guess would be that Hunter would need a little longer, right, as a starting pitcher now to lengthen out, whereas Ashcraft could ease a little into it a little bit more. I guess your thoughts on getting those 2 guys back? That'd be pretty huge.
Absolutely. And I think one of the timetables, like a little bit after the All-Star break, mid-month, maybe something like that.
I would assume, but like I said, I think Ashcraft could come a little earlier, like probably not before the All-Star game, but right, yeah. I would expect maybe that next week for Ashcraft, and maybe another week or 2 after that for Green would be my educated opinion. I don't know for sure.
When Green's healthy, he's a frontline starter. I mean, he's your ace. He's got electric stuff. He knows how to pitch. He's learned how to pitch instead of just being a thrower. Mm-hmm. But you want to bring him back along a little more slowly, as you said. Ashcraft can give you more depth in the bullpen, a kind of a swing guy. I mean, getting those 2 guys back is imperative if they want to make a second half run. And they're knocking right out the door, not just of the wild card, but the division that's within reach. It's not outlandish to say that they're still in this.
Yeah, they finished Wednesday a game and a half out of the wild card, so that's very good news. On the future good news front, the futures game rosters were announced in Sal Stewart, who is playing for Chattanooga in AA, and Alfredo Duno, who's down in Daytona this year as a 19-year-old catcher with huge pop. They were both named to the futures game. Stewart's been really fun to watch. If you see any of the clips of him, he was good in spring training. I know he impressed Francona and the coaching staff. I would expect both these guys to be big leaguers sometime in 26 or very early 27.
I'd be shocked if they weren't. I mean, you've seen them more than I have this year, to be honest. But from everything I've heard, what you've said, and from what I've talked to a few other people that follow the team intensely, the future is bright with those 2. So it'll be interesting to see them play. I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm going to make a point to watch that game just for the express purpose of seeing them.
Well, and some, obviously their future stars is the way they promote them when they make that game. But I mean, guys like Joey Votto have played in that game. So there have been Reds that have played there that have gone on to do really good things. And I think Ellie got to play in that game a few years ago, possibly. Although no, maybe not, unless he was the Double-A year. You asked me the other day in a text message if I was going to the Speedway Classic down in Bristol, Tennessee, August 2nd. I don't have plans to go. There was a time when the Riverfront was still kind of nestled in the hands of the Dotson brothers, that being that they're from that neck of the woods, so to speak, and that's definitely how they would speak down there, I think. There was a possibility of a summit to be held down there. I believe old friend Tim Daniel from the Locked On Network is heading down there. But being that it's the time of year when my kid going into high school is going to try out for a soccer team, and there's a few other things going on around here in Columbus, I'm going to go ahead and not go. And I got to tell you, I think it's a novelty act in a lot of ways. Most of those seats are going to be dreadful.
I was going to say, how far away from the field would the seats be? I mean, would there be a portion that's fairly close, or, I mean, I can't imagine that baseball setup there.
No, it looks to me like it's a very small portion that'll be somewhat close. And then,
correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they have a college football game there a few years back?
They may have
talking about it.
They might have. I don't remember for sure. It's obviously got a huge infield though, as far as the infield of the racetrack.
Yeah, I wonder if they put up some auxiliary bleachers closer to the field, for some people.
Yeah, you'd picture it kind of like the way they used to do the NCAA Final Four before they put the court in the middle. Remember, they used to put it at the end zone of this football stadiums, and then they would erect a temporary kind of stands right there, and really would be the length of the court. It's going to be fun to watch. I think the biggest hope, and it's funny, the Braves' fortunes are not that good right now. The idea that the Reds could be in a playoff chase, and that's going to be a national TV situation as well, right? So the idea that they could be in a playoff chase on August 2nd, trying to make a run, and here they play a game down, and they did play the Field of Dreams game, a couple years ago, and kind of several of the teammates, players maybe are still there. That's kind of a novelty thing, a one-game thing. It's interesting. Hey, one more bit of news. The Reds have not been swept in 2025. Do you think that's an important distinction or a wacky anomaly?
I think maybe a little bit of both, but it just goes to show that they haven't bottomed out this year. They haven't gone on bad stretches for too long a time. They've been pretty consistent, around the 500 mark, a little bit above, which is encouraging. You've talked in the past about how Terry Francona managed teams really put it on in the second half. I don't know how much of an effect that will have on this year's club, this Reds team, but that's exciting to see them that they're still, 3 games above the 500 mark entering the night tonight on the night off, and they're into Philadelphia. Now they've got a tough stretch coming up. 3 games in Philly this weekend, and then they host the red hot Miami Marlins, right? I mean, they go 4. Baseball.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. They go 4 with the Marlins and then 3 with the Rockies. So if the Marlins could cool down a little bit, that's actually, if we would have been talking a month ago, we would have said that's an ideal stretch heading into the All-Star break.
Absolutely, but like you said, the Marlins just took 2 or 3 from the Twins, and they've won 9 out of 10. And if they revert back to form, that would be great. Miami and Colorado back to back. Colorado looks worse than the AAA team this year. They look bad.
Do.
Wow.
Well, so I was thinking of wacky anomaly, like stats that don't really matter, right? They look impressive, but they don't really matter. And again, time will tell. If the Reds could go the whole season without being swept, that likely means that the win percentage keeps going up, because I doubt they lose 2 out of 3 as often. The crazy one that I thought of right away was remember the 2000 Reds? That's the first year Griffey came to town. The junior was traded to Cincinnati, and they went the whole year. They won 85 games, and technically the rules were different back then. We just saw what would have been was a suspended game. Remember, in Boston, they ended up, finishing that game out the next day. Well, years ago, when you ended up before 5 innings, or if you were tied after 5, you basically started all over. And years ago, that in 2000, that was what happened on opening day. They got rained out in like the 4th inning, and they technically count the stats. So they count that as a tie. But the Reds played the Brewers, I believe it was, the very next day. And so they played 163 games that year, and they never got shut out.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Which is just wild. There was a Yankees team from from late 31 to early 33 is the only other team in baseball history that I could find that went a full regular season, which would have been the 32 season. That's the Bronx Bombers, right? And I mean, that's the big thing.
It's a great nugget right there, Seth. I mean, we were talking about the Yankees juggernaut of a lineup, and they got shut out 3 times in a row here recently. And to think of that 2000 team for the Reds that did not
Never
no
got shut out.
mistakes ever. That's
Right. And they only won 85 wins, 85 games. And, they came off that season the year before where they won 96 and just barely missed the playoff in 99. But again, wacky anomaly or doesn't mean anything. Of course, in 2012 or 13, I always forget which, the Reds had that season where no starting pitcher missed a turn.
And if we're talking about this year's team, that anomaly you're talking about not being swept, I just think that it shows that this team really competes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be content to just lay down and give up a last game, even if they're down 2-0 or 3-0 in a series. They're going to battle and they're going to try to salvage something, which does show me a lot, actually. So I think it's a little more than an anomaly. I think it's pretty. I think it's fairly significant. It's not like the most overwhelming positive attribute, but it's something to hang your hat on. And you're right there, 3 games above the 500 mark, nearing the All-Star break. I think if you were to say at the start of the year, and considering everything else that's happened with the injury to Green and some other things, would you be satisfied with where you are right now? I mean, I'd take it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they had the other back in the division and game and a half back in the wild card.
They've slayed some other dragons recently too. Like they had that stretch where they couldn't win rubber matches. Like, right, if they took series, it was always because they won the first 2 games. Whereas there was a stretch where they just weren't winning rubber matches, and I think they've done better at that lately. And then the other one was winning a game late when they trailed late. Was it the other night they were down? They broke a terrible string where they were down after 8 innings and they won a game. They hadn't had
the Padres game on Sunday.
Yeah, and they hadn't had any comeback wins for a while there earlier in the season, and now they've strung some together here. We'll get to the Boston series in just a minute. They had a nice comeback on Wednesday night. So I'm heartened to hear that you think it's actually kind of something that they have been swept.
I've been hanging around you too long. I'm positive now. And, the fans here, for the most part, I see their comments, and I'm going to stop being Mr. Negative all the time and buy into it.
Oh, we'll get to it in a minute. But Wednesday's game, I was coaching my son's Pony League baseball game, and I looked down at my phone and hear you text, well, it looks like they're going to get blown out again or something like that. And then you go, wait, maybe not.
I say that. I'm like, but I said, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
The big grand slam just came right after that.
Let me go home and watch this. Yeah. All right, let's go drop kick Murphy's way and shipping up to Boston. The Reds were. They go up to Fenway, and certainly you can't help but think of the 75 World Series. I wasn't born yet.
I was one.
You were one. You don't remember it.
No, I was a year and a half old.
But after what we saw last weekend in the Padres series with the celebration of the Big Red Machine, and then they go straight to Boston. And I don't know, did you see WEEI had the graphics that were commiserate with the old 1975 Chirons and stuff? You ought to look that up. Search that on Google or social media, and you'll see they've got a couple. I think Dave O'Brien calls their TV games, and he was explaining what was going on with, and they were cool. They weren't committed to the bit enough to not have the score bug. They had to keep it, but they made it almost completely see-through except for the white numbers up in the corner of the screen because they wanted the screen to look as traditional as possible. But anyway, it was pretty cool. Something that wasn't cool for us Reds fans, Chase Burns did not have a great second appearance. He had that double play ball that might have helped him get out of the first, but he threw around 40 pitches, Paul, before being yanked. What I guess it's just so hard. It's a guy's second start. They had watched him on video, obviously, against the Yankees, where he struck out his first 5 batters he faced, and then even 6 in 2 innings. There's a question of tipping pitches. Neither Sam LeCure nor Jeff Brantley seem to know for sure if that's what was happening. But it's true that if you watch that game, he was living in that top half of the middle of the zone. His slider was going right across there, and they were just smashing it. I guess, what were your thoughts of that one?
Just generally speaking, a big stage for him. His second major league start, second career start in the big leagues at Fenway Park. And, and you talked about the nostalgia. I know that happened long before Chase Burns, but,
Yeah.
I'm sure he might be felt some of the, the Red Sox history. It was a highly anticipated series for a middle of the regular season type deal. I don't know. I thought I read a lot online about him tipping his pitches and perhaps maybe the Red Sox were stealing signs. I don't know about that. Um, but from what I saw, he just didn't have it. He just didn't have his stuff. He wasn't fooling anybody. Like you said, he didn't have his command. He was only in there for a small sample size, but they hit him pretty hard and they had to take him out. It's hard to tell after his second start, to be honest, in my opinion.
It is. It is. And look, I mean, his first start comes against the Yankees, and even if some of those Yankees were scuffling, I mean, as a kid, he had to. I mean, even Aaron Judge is old enough that Chase Burns could say, "I grew up liking him." You know what I mean? Like,
And he said that too.
um,
Five strikeouts and was on a roll.
yeah, and then to go to Boston, and obviously there's some magic in going to Fenway Park and all that. So it's tough. We hope he can settle back in and either A, learn from it, right? Obviously, but B, just settle back in and be part of the rotation. Because after one start, we were all daring to dream. I mean, think about if Hunter Green could come back healthy and Andrew Abbott keeps on like the 1-2-3 punch we talked about last week when I was with Skylar Webker. I mean,
I saw that. Yeah.
in a short series, that would be just amazing if you get the Yankees game version of Chase Burns. Certainly you wouldn't want to ruin your bullpen in a postseason game where you have to take him out in the first inning. But hopefully things go okay. The Reds battled back a little bit in that game, but it was just too high a hill to climb. So that takes us to game 2. We mentioned it was halted due to rain. The rule is different now, so they picked it up the next day at 2:30. And that the one thing about that makes it tough is Brady Singer certainly, after a long rain delay wasn't coming back, but he definitely wasn't coming back the next day. So now you dive into your bullpen right away, and I think that affected some of the choices that were made by Tito Francona.
Yeah, and then knowing you had a night game coming up, the full night game afterward, but the Reds, they came out, they struck quickly, of course, and took the lead, and just couldn't hang on to it there in the end. But they battled, and one of those things where that's a quirky game to manage. I mean, coming back like that, knowing that you have the full game 3 of the series coming up next that same day.
Well, and that Tito had to feel really good when Sam Moll, that's when he gave him the 2 innings and he took care of things, the career high 4 strikeouts. But he stuck with Lyon Richardson too long. He had a good 1 inning, and then the second inning he came out, gave up a couple runs. Barlow also gave up a run, and runs are at a premium at that point, right? I mean, it was pretty clear that the Reds were not going to be able to do much, especially later in the game. I think Chapman came in and showed us kind of what we remembered out of Chapman. I joked, I've got a neighbor here who's from New England, and he came actually with the carpool with the soccer guys. And he said, "How about my Red Sox?" And I was like, "Yeah, I hope the Reds make a trade, and maybe they could take Aroldis Chapman with them." But I'd be okay with that for sure.
Oh, it'd be great to have him back. I know Pagan's done a nice job at the back end of the bullpen so far, but wouldn't that be something if they could get him back?
But you could really mix and match even more. Like you,
oh yeah,
like picture Chapman,
like you said.
Yeah, picture Chapman though the way that Francona used Andrew Miller back with the Indians back in the day. Like,
he was devastating the way that he was used. He was
bring
unbelievable.
him in the 7th or 8th or 9th. Any of it. Let's go on to Wednesday night in the news. The Reds won in comeback fashion, as we mentioned, and I was surprised because again, I'm at my kid's game. I'm not focused on the Reds at all, and then I get your text message, and I didn't know where they were in the game. And then we get home and I have it on DVR. So I fast forward. I mean, it's the 7th inning and they're down 4-0. And that ball that CES hit, and I know we need to talk about him a little bit. That ball was smashed. I mean, I remember when they didn't have the monster seats, it was hard to hit it over there, especially in left center. But they've got those monster seats now that extend how high the wall is and what you'd have to do. I mean, that thing was just a bomb, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. He hit it on the Lansdowne Street, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
They said, I think they measured at like 439
I thought that was
feet.
low.
But I was going to say the way based on all the replays we saw, I thought it was at least 460. I mean, he crushed that ball
Yeah.
out of the stadium, and it's kind of ironic because I was, sending you that text, kind of being down on the situation, and a couple days before, during the finale of the San Diego series, I'm like, CES has got to go. I mean,
Yeah.
or he's got to sit on the bench. And there he comes up with another big hit for the Reds. Remember the 3-run double he had in the Yankees series was huge.
Yeah. And he's shown when he can stay healthy, which has been rare. He's shown that he can get hot for one thing, but also if he's healthy for a long enough stretch, he kind of settles in and does a little better job. I just worry that he's not going to ever have the chance because of the things that nag him injury wise and things like that. And we're going to have viewer mail here coming up. I've got a couple questions that will take us down that path because CES has played first and third right now. It's going to be very interesting. And I know Candelario is not a part of it anymore, but Noelvi Marte comes into play here pretty quickly, I think. Maybe even as early as tomorrow or the day that this podcast is released. So we'll see how things go. We've got a couple questions, so we'll move on from that right now. Let's talk about the two guys up the middle before we go to viewer mail. Matt McLain. He's finally getting it, isn't he? He's been on a heater.
Around. Got to
he's
the worst
actually
start you can imagine, but man, has he been hot. But he's so steady at second in the field. I really love watching him play. He's so heady. He made it. He had a play. I can't remember what exactly happened, but he either backed up a throw or something on the. Go ahead.
I'll tell you. It's last night. He played shortstop in the second game because Tito was he DH'd Ellie, and the ball was played off the monster. But Hayes I think that he could catch it, so he was too close to the monster, and it ricocheted back toward the infield, but not that far. I mean, it was out there, and all of a sudden you see the back because if you're looking from the home plate view, you see the back of McLain just sprinting out there, and Friedel was coming over. But McLain picks it up and wheels around and throws a runner out at third. And as Tito said in the soundbite after the game, that's a winning play. It just is. It's shades of Jeter and some of the things he used to do. Like there's no reason for Matt McLain to be there.
It's just Matt McLain, though. He's a heady player. He's a guy that you really need out there every day up the middle. His bat will be there in the end. He got off to a nightmarish start, but he's been coming on the last few weeks. His average, continues to rise, but his presence in the field is what I really like, at second base, that strong defensive presence, tremendous range. He can play short if he needs to. Just a valuable piece for the Reds. And that was a heck of a play. And the way you described it was perfect.
Well, and so the last 7 games, and actually he's cooled off just a touch because he was super, super hot. But his last 7 games, he's hitting .310 with a .355 on base and a .379 slugging. If you stretch that out to 15 games, it's .309, .387, but .436 slugging out of like a 5'8" second baseman. I mean, that's just so great. I have high hopes for him long term, and I think you're right. I mean, he missed all of last season due to injury. He actually, remember, he had a good start in April, and then he tweaked something, and then he was out. And then when he came back, he just couldn't find it. So it just is what it is there, but he's back into it. And then we go to Ellie De La Cruz, and I seem to bring him up every week. I think we should. The All-Star starting snub, I mean, it's a popularity contest. New York voters, put in Lindor. There's a great stats comparison out there of the 2 stats categories, and it lists like 11 or 12 different categories. And the only one that Lindor is ahead of Ellie is total at-bats, which is really not meaningful. Last 30 games, Ellie's at .313, a .389 on base, but .589 slugging, 7 home runs and 18 RBI. He's settling into that role. I think with Terry Francona as his manager, they're really defining roles. Remember, Friedel was told get on base, right? And that's a no-brainer, it would seem like, but when they simplified it down to that, it feels like Friedel was able to just go. Now, the same with Ellie. I think Tito views the number 3 hole in a certain way that maybe the modern analytic guys don't see it quite as the same. But I think he's settling in there. He's driving in runs. He's being the best hitter on the team, which traditionally, if you go back decades, that third hitter always has been.
Yeah.
Overall, Paul, he's hitting .275 for the season.
And for me, here's the big thing. From the start of the season till now, he's improved so much on cutting down on the strikeouts.
Yes.
to go along with all those accolades and you just mentioned of late, cutting down on the strikeouts has been imperative. He's not striking out 32% of the time like he was before, and not in big moments. He's meeting the moment. He had a big base hit last night to give him a nice insurance run. You could see his teammates really applauding him on that. He shortened his swing, just grounded it through the middle.
Yep.
He's young. He's a young player still. He's learning.
23.
Exactly. You just gotta love his just raw natural ability. He's a freak athletically. You talk about the future for McLean, but what about Ellie De La Cruz?
Yeah, it's
he's
the
just
two of them together, especially. But to
amazing.
your point, his OPS is 842 this year. That's better by 42 points than last year. He already has 58 RBI on the season. Here's the one that gets me. And listen, in 2023, the last month and a half, he was dead tired, I think, right? Like no adjustments that he tried to make helped or worked. He kind of like, especially the last month of the season, limped into the end of the year. But think about this. To this point this season, because he got a late call up, he's played in only 11 fewer games than he did in all of 2023 as a big leaguer. He has 60 fewer strikeouts than he did in all of 23.
Just goes to show he's making adjustments on his end of big league pitching, and he's learning. He's just maturing. I'll be honest with you. You and I, when we shoot our texts back and forth, sometimes I get frustrated, especially earlier in the year when he was striking out in big moments. I just say he strikes out too much. He just strikes out too much. He's not a superstar yet. But you know what? You can see him maturing right before our very eyes.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing too.
It's been great to watch. It really
Yeah.
has. And
I really like watching him play. Aside from all his tools that he brings, he just looks like he's a little kid having fun out there. Like how Ken Griffey Jr. was when he was young with Seattle. And that's a joy to watch. It's like refreshing.
It is. And I think, you see the long hair or maybe the unbuttoned on a jersey and the different things. And people who don't watch them all the night could just roll their eyes if they're codgy old guys that like baseball a certain way. But I think even the old timers that watch the Reds day in and day out just see the joy, and they don't see that others. They don't think he's not flamboyant in a way that is just like ruining or hurting the baseball, right? He's so happy to be out there. He plays with such joy and excitement, and I think it helps the baseball. And I think people finally get to see a guy like that do that, and it's just been amazing.
And you can tell his teammates love him too.
Absolutely. Hey, we mentioned a little bit, they've got the 3 games in Philadelphia this weekend, 4 at home against Miami, then 3 against Colorado. Heading into the break, again, I still would call Florida or Miami an easier opponent at this point than some of the teams they have been facing. And again, hopefully they come down a little bit from what they've been lately. And, I know you spent time in Minnesota, so you paid attention to that series against the Twins that Miami had. But I will tell you this, for a team like Minnesota to go down to Miami where I guess now you go alternate every other year, but this is still very early in that. I would think, because I watched part of the game yesterday, I think it was during the day, or maybe did they play today on Thursday?
Played today, yeah.
Yeah, they played during the day Thursday today. So I tuned in a little bit while I was getting ready to go golf, and even on TV, the cavernous stadium that they play in with nobody in it is just like, it's got to be almost like unsettling as a player if you've never played in that situation. And I could see how you could get swept pretty easy down there.
Absolutely. There's no excitement whatsoever. It's like going to Tampa Bay when they played in this year, obviously Tampa's got a little more juice. They're playing at Steinbrenner Field, a little more intimate setting. Fans are there. But when they played in the Dome in St. Pete, just an awful, awful place for baseball. Miami's a little bit fancier, a little bit bigger stadium. But yeah, if the fans aren't there and not providing the juice and the electricity, I imagine it might be tough playing there. The Twins, I don't know if that had any effect on the Twins this weekend this past week. The Twins scored a collective 3 runs in the whole series in 3 games. So they can't hit their way out of a wet paper bag right now. I don't think the stadium had anything to do with that, but certainly the way Miami's playing, of course, had something to do with that. The way they're pitching, that's kind of fueled their little stretch here. They've kind of come back to life a little.
All right. Well, we'll go on to viewer mail, which, as founder of the Riverfront used to say, Chad Dotson used to say, actual letters from actual viewers, which I forgot to pick up the
Is
letters.
this
So
live like tonight, or are these like have these been sent in previously?
these have been sent in earlier today. But the joke was always like an old David Letterman joke, like he would rattle the papers, and it was a bit, and it was very funny, even every time he did it. But the viewer mail comes in as part of our Patreon group, and to join our Patreon, you go to patreon.com/riverfrontcincy. You can pick which tier you want to join, and then get with me by message, and I'll add you to our Slack channel, which, as we've mentioned earlier in the show and before, if you're in the Slack channel, we've got different topics: Reds, Bengals, random movies. We talk about all kinds of different things, but within each of those, we try to keep it civil, and we're all together. It's kind of like we're all pulling on the same, oar or whatever. We're in this together. We want to see the Reds do well, and we're happy when they do well, and we're sad together when they don't. But it's just a great community, and I'd urge anybody to sign up and check it out. So let's go ahead and jump into viewer mail, and I'm going to start with this from Kyle Kapler, because we already kind of dove into a little bit of it, but I forced myself not to talk too much about it. He says, what are your thoughts on Steer and left? Against a lefty, I would put Steer in left and Hayes in right, and CES on first if he can build on Wednesday. I think that's fine. Steer is still likely, in my opinion, building up that arm, so they've been picky. They pick and choose when they put him in the outfield. I think he's played fine out there last year when he played out there quite a bit. I worry a little bit, but I don't know how much Hayes is comfortable in right, but I think he's a veteran outfielder. He could probably handle it for a game or two here or there. Your thoughts on Steer, and then we're going to talk a little bit. We'll probably have to see Espinal out there a little bit, and maybe even Gavin Lux. I mean, because of another question we're going to answer later.
My thoughts aren't probably as well educated as yours are. You watch the Reds a little more than me, but I like Steer at first base. I really do.
Yeah, he's
And
good.
that left field spot, I like the thought of maybe Gavin Lux playing a little more out there. Will Benson could play either corner outfield spot. Um, with Spencer Steer, like you said, the arm. I'm not an expert on his fielding prowess, but from what I've seen, he's just okay. But from what I saw at first base, I really like him there. If he continues to hit the way he's doing, I would just leave him there.
Sure. I think that's probably it. I think that's the answer. Remember, you also have the DH, right? So, but we are trying to figure out how to handle who you play when you face a lefty as well. So I think obviously Benson probably isn't going to start too much against lefties. And then Lux is hit or miss as far as how often they will start him. I worry a little bit of Lux in the outfield. I've seen that arm not be able to, get the ball in as I would like to see it. But again, I think as much as we say about the team that was built, and you and I probably agree that they should have added one or two more outfielders, they built a team that has guys that can mix and match as needed here or there, right? I mean, it's kind of like why we didn't really, as fans, like the idea that Espinal played so many games at third base, because his bat just couldn't stay hot the whole time, right? He's a fine defensive third baseman, but I don't want Espinal to be an everyday player, okay? So that's where I am with it. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think there's enough guys that can play a position like, hey, twice a week, can you play left field, Gavin Lux? Yes, I will. That kind of thing.
Can't quarrel with that at all. They have the kind of team where there is versatility. They can mix and match, but like you said, they don't have that set lineup. They have either lefty or righty, or if they want to mix guys in against both. I think the way that they're constructed with what they got, and thank goodness Terry Francona is the manager, because he knows what the heck he's doing. It's really about matchups at this point, and who you're going against, and of course the health of the players obviously is key going down the stretch. But with what you just described, mixing and matching is, I guess, the way to go.
Right. I mean, Jake Fraley is on the IL. They're going to try to just not have him have surgery so he can try to come back. But his power was already non-existent this year for the most part. And I think A non-throwing arm issue would only zap his power even more. So I don't know. I'm waiting
Let me
to
ask you
see.
this. Let me ask you this though. There's a lot of positions that are like that. The corner outfielders, third base, arguably first base, that are just not set with everyday
Right.
guys. I mean, how much of a concern is that for you as the season progresses? Can they
So
get by mixing and matching if they have to throughout the year?
so my thing's funny because like I lean back on especially 1999 a lot because that was like the great season they had. Plus, I was in college and I was able to pay more attention. I probably went to more games in 1999 than I have any other season of my life. And I look at it, and I actually broke this down a couple years ago. They had basically Mike Cameron and Greg Vaughn that played every day for the most part. Vaughn took a day off here or there, but they had Michael Tucker, they had Dimitri Young. I'm blanking Jeffrey Hammonds. They had those guys in the playing right field, all three of them at times. I remember at third base, there was it 95 that Mark Lewis and Jeff Branson platooned at third base. Like it just there's times when the Reds have done this effectively. It's when you don't have the right guy to bat against a lefty or a righty, that's when it's upsetting. It's like, hey, this isn't working. And you're just doing it because he bats left-handed and it's a right-handed starter today, but it's not really the answer. That's when it's tough. You want to find that platoon that works just right. And I think there's enough guys, and I can't speak for Gavin Lux or some of these other guys, Will Benson. I got to assume they're somewhat content with their playing time, right? They're all playing quite a few games every week. It's just they're just not maybe where, hey, Ellie's your shortstop. Like it's not that set in stone. So let's go ahead and move on. Skylar Webker, host of Late Night Reds here on the channel. You can check it out at 9 p.m. Eastern every Sunday night. Dial it in on YouTube. Get in the comments. Talk to Skylar and Ben. They do a great job. Now, here's one for you, Paul. He says, how do the Reds acquire Clase from the Guardians and Weiler Abreu from the Red Sox? It's all I dream about. It's all I think about. I may have a problem. Skylar, there are support groups for people like you. If the Reds could get Clase, that would trump getting Chapman at this point. So that'd be pretty special.
Right. That would be special. I tell you what, he's got electric stuff. Will Cleveland be a seller? It looks like maybe they will. The way they're going, that would be something. But what would they have to give up to get him? Prospects?
Yeah, prospects. I mean, I doubt Cleveland, if they're selling, is going to be looking for guys that can play right now as much. I mean, maybe you throw in a guy here or there. The funny thing, the other night, somebody let loose on the internet a rumor that the Guardians might be willing to trade Jose Ramirez. And it was
come on, no way.
It was like, well, Tito would love to manage him again. Can you imagine that infield? Could you imagine having Ellie and Jose Ramirez?
No, I couldn't. But that's why Cleveland locked him up, and he's not going anywhere. But do you think Pagan is the guy? Like, if the season keeps going, they keep winning. I mean, are they going to go get a hammer?
I got to tell you, he hasn't disappointed.
No,
I mean,
that's the thing.
I was worried coming in, but everything they said about him pitching, because he had a was it a sports hernia or whatever it was in the offseason when he signed before the 24 season, and he was a shell of himself. So all we knew of him was that last season. He's a totally different pitcher this year, and he's got that. He's got whatever it takes. People disagree with me, but it takes something to get those last three outs. It just does, and he's got it. Like I think we saw on opening day in a very short sample size that Ian Jabot maybe doesn't, but Pagan does, and I'm not itching now. If somebody came and said they wanted me to take Clase or Chapman off their hands, I'm doing it.
Christopher Wright, yeah, and then you have him at the back, and then you have Pagan as the ultimate setup man, I guess. At that point,
yeah, I mean
that would be fine, yeah, absolutely. But I'm saying if Clase weren't ever, or whoever it will be, that maybe the Reds might get as the closer. I'd be comfortable with Pagan.
I'm comfortable with Pagan myself, and let's just say there's a reason because of that closer specifically. You're going to need relief help. I hope they get one or two relievers, right? but closer specifically is way down the list. And we've talked for 3 weeks now. To me, it starts in outfield production, a productive power hitting outfielder, and then it starting pitching depth would be good. And we've got a question later that scares me, so we'll get to that in a minute. And then but I think relief depth is a must regardless. And
See, I'm lefty out of the bullpen. You talked about it earlier, right?
right. So whether it's a closer or not, that's fine. But
Yeah.
so there we are with that. Let's go off the beaten path a little bit. We're gonna divert. Do you have any 4th of July must foods? Tim Daniel, former host on this network, wrote in and he wants to know, what are your 4th of July must have foods?
Well, for me, it starts with hamburgers, I guess, on the
Yeah.
grill. But I also like those red, white, and blue dyed Rice Krispie treats.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever had those before?
No.
I mean, they're just like Rice
I've had
Krispie
Rice
bars, but I
Krispie
think
treats.
they're
Yeah.
red, white, and blue, and they taste phenomenal. My wife makes the best in the world.
Okay.
I also like at the fireworks. I like getting a bomb pop. Like red,
Yeah.
white, and blue. That's
Yeah,
classic.
absolutely. Absolutely.
What
Um,
about you?
I want to take the time out real quick. Thank you for all the sympathy I got from my Kindle story last week. You reached out, Paul, but
I did.
other people here on the network reached out and let me know they felt for me, and
I
I
was very
appreciate.
concerned, Seth. You're my guy. I was like, if you can't read off your Kindle, what are you gonna do?
It's gone, man. I had to use a little gift card, and I bought a
Get a new
lesser
one?
Kindle. I did buy
Oh,
one. It's smaller. It was a little cheaper, but actually I can hold it in my hand a little better. Like if I'm laying in bed and nodding off, like the old Kindle was a little big for me to grip with one hand. So, no, I got a new one, so that's good. He said, okay, I will answer that with a little tale of my day today. My kids wanted to go to Zumbizi Bay, which is the big water park here in Columbus, over by the Columbus Zoo, not far from you, Paul. They wanted to go. I had no desire to go, and I decided to go play golf in the afternoon. But they left in the morning, and I had a few things to take care of work-wise, and then I was done for the day. And I basically said, you know what? I'm just going to grill these brats that I bought the other day. And I had some Johnsonville cheddar brats.
there you go. I was gonna
And
say
I
it has to be
fired up the
Johnsonville.
smoker, and I was like,
Mhm.
I've got time. I'm going to set it down around 300 degrees. I'm going to put them on the top rack. I'm going to go back every 8 minutes and turn them. And they were delicious. So bratwurst to me, I think,
Mm,
is the go-to. I will admit too, if I'm at a cookout on 4th of July, I will get a cheeseburger and a bratwurst.
like a side dish.
A side dish? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Potato salad.
I've developed a little bit of a like for egg salad in recent years.
Oh,
I don't know
oof.
how many people have that at 4th of July cookouts. I'll eat a potato salad. That's pretty good. Yeah. A little bacon in there, maybe.
Sure.
A little red skin potato salad. That sounds good. Maybe we'll have to make some for tomorrow. All right. You've been around the country, and Tim
Mhm.
Daniel's second part of his question will be right up your alley. What's your favorite fast food burger?
That's a good question. Well, it was Fuddruckers, and they're pretty much defunct now. But on the
Okay.
West,
You want to call
I,
that fast food, though? That's a kind of a sit down.
okay. Oh, so you're like real fast food. Okay.
So I
I,
will
I
go as high as fast casual. So we'll include the Five Guys of the world.
okay.
All
Okay.
right, Shake Shack, Five Guys.
I would have to say on the West Coast, California, In-N-Out Burger.
You're that guy, huh?
The fries aren't as good there, but it's not about the fries there. It's about the burger, and
Mhm.
definitely In-N-Out Burger.
I've had In-N-Out. I had it once. If I'm going to include Shake Shack and Five Guys, I might have to go Five Guys.
Five Guys, awesome burger, but it's
Yeah,
like you have to make a mortgage payment to buy one.
that's true. But
Because man, if it's
in
one patty or
Ohio,
two,
so Tony Kornheiser talked about it recently. He stopped in a local one, and I think it actually kind of started in Washington D.C. Five Guys did, or in that area. And he stopped in, and he got the small, like the junior size of the bacon cheeseburger, and he said it was like $12.80, and that's all he ordered. And I went to our local Five Guys here with my two sons recently, and my son got that same burger, and here in Ohio it was only like $8.75, which is still too much for a one patty burger, but
sure.
still better than 12 something. So I'm going Five Guys.
Five
I've
Guys.
never had Whataburger.
Don't believe I've had that either. No. Shake
Um,
Shack's okay. I
Big
mean,
Shack's pretty good.
but let's talk about Fuddruckers. So we determined that Fuddruckers is not fast food.
No,
But
no.
did you ever have
Fuddruckers,
have you ever had a Fuddruckers hamburger?
I have.
You're not as high on it as I am,
I'm not as
obviously.
high on it. I would
Okay.
go. I would probably rank Red Robin over Fuddruckers.
No way. See, Fuddruckers is really fresh. They have the butchers in
I know.
house.
I know.
And well, I'm biased too because I worked at the original one in Minneapolis, in Edina,
Okay.
Minnesota, 70th in France, which closed a long time ago, by the way. But yeah, if we're talking just pure fast food, like you said, In-N-Out Burger by
Okay.
far.
Well, what we need to do though, Tim Daniel lives down south of the border, across the Spence Bridge, down in
Beautiful
Kentucky,
Newport, Kentucky.
northern Kentucky. Tim, you've got to come up to Columbus. We'll take you to Thurman's Cafe,
Oh, there you go.
and that will be the best burger you've ever had, Tim. I promise.
100%.
So make plans to come up this way, Tim. All right. Let's move on to Rex Scott. Now, this is when you know that the we call them slackers of late. The people in the Slack channel, they are getting into this because they're not only sending viewer mail questions, but they're going back and forth between each other's viewer mail questions. So Rex Scott said, to follow up on the question posed by Kyle Kapler, if we get crawled, there we go, going a little negative, again at the trade deadline and don't land an outfielder, who are some infielders we could start in one of the three outfield spots, also who are the best DH options? Let's go ahead and include Noel V. Marte, who might be coming back. I think Marte is a better defensive third baseman than CES. So if it was up to me with his bat and defense, I would probably start Marte most days at third. So I think that's your list, right? It's got to be Lux, Steer maybe, and Espinal can play left field. And then Steer and CES would likely be your guys at first or DH. They've had some success starting both Trevino and Stevenson in the same game. That's been interesting. So they've played DH, or Stevenson's played some DH when he gets a day off from behind the plate. So that's your options right now, and it's going to continue to be. We already discussed kind of how they're playing the hot hand or they're playing the percentages and things like that. And unless they make a move that's going to impress us, then I think that's what we're left with, right?
Well, and for me, with this year's team, Terry Francona is the manager. That's great. And if we're David Bell in charge, I'd be a little more nervous about that scenario with mixing and matching, like we talked about. That's just my opinion.
Sure.
And
No,
I'm
I
sure
think
there's some
you're right.
David Bell fans out there. I don't want to make anyone upset.
Well, I don't know. Kyle Kapler also said he'd love to see it. Marte get back in there. He raises a question, though, of Sal Stewart. I doubt Sal makes it to the big leagues this year. He's in Double A. He's having a great season. Obviously, we mentioned he's going to the Futures game. I doubt he's on that fast a track, especially with all the corner infielders they already have.
Yeah, I wouldn't know much to add to that. That's a good take. There are a lot of options, aren't there?
There are. But also, I guess that comes up more in trade discussions as well. Joey Gaditza, our friend from Canada, he says he's with Kyle Kapler as well, but he would love to see Marte patrol right field.
Right field.
I'm not putting Marte in the outfield.
What do you think about Rhys Hines getting some more playing time out there?
I think against lefties, he should get plenty of playing time.
I mean, he's got a lot of pop.
He does.
He's strong. He's athletic.
And he's an outfielder, which is the problem. Marte's not. And Marte's coming back from an injury. And they spent the entire spring training / offseason working on his throwing from third base. I'm not moving him off third base. He's gonna play third base and DH sometimes. Marte, for me, Joey, is in there in the infield. All right, Brandon Kamick says, hear me out. And we're going to have to really hear him out. He says, wouldn't an Owen, and I don't even know how to say his name. He's a Cubs top prospect in the outfield. Owen Casey, is that Caissie? Wouldn't an Owen Casey / Lodolo swap benefit both sides? I had to do some research. and I'm here to admit when I don't know everybody else's top prospects, I didn't even know who he was. So I dove down a rabbit hole, and it looks like he's ready to play in the big leagues, but he hasn't yet. So the
He's in
question,
Iowa. Is he in Iowa right now, or is he in
yeah,
Double A?
yeah, he's in AAA.
Okay,
So the
Iowa
question
Cubs.
is, do you really want to make a trade with one of your starters that you're arguably your fourth best starter, your third best starter? I guess right now he'd be your third, maybe your third. I'm not doing that deal because the Reds need to maintain their starting pitching depth for one, and I don't know that you solve your problems by getting somebody else's prospect to throw into the outfield on everyday basis. And I know he's probably blocked, right? He's blocked there in Chicago right now, but I'm not making that deal. Now, in my research, our good old friend Jim Bowden had a list of top minor league prospects who he thinks will be moved before the trade deadline. And he was number one. Casey, if I'm saying it right, was number one. And also on that list was Edwin Arroyo, which he's having an okay year at the plate after he missed all last year because of a shoulder injury to his non-throwing shoulder. And he is a top defensive shortstop prospect. And he's right there waiting on a chance, right, eventually. And the Reds have a glut there. So that's who I see trading for if Class A were to come available.
Right.
If
You can
Chapman,
afford.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I'd trade him for Chapman. Chapman's much older, and you're only going to get the rest of this year, obviously. But Edwin Arroyo, I doubt they trade South Stewart because they're kind of banking on him, I think, for the next year or two. But that's who I see trading. I just don't see trading for a minor leaguer. Do you? To put into play every.
No, at this moment, I would not do that Lodolo trade for a prospect. Lodolo is someone you need in your rotation at this time. He's left-handed too. Pretty good stuff. He was a former first-round pick, right, out of TCU. Got ability. He's been
First
pitching
pitcher
okay.
taken in the draft.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
at this now, if the Reds all of a sudden crashed at the back half of the year, out of the race, maybe I'd entertain it then. But what do you think of that old axiom? You don't want to make that kind of trade with a division rival.
Well, that's the next point. And Kyle Kapler chimed in again. He said he likes the idea, but he would hate to see Lodolo carve us up the next 3 years. I mean, even Travis Wood carved us up a little bit when he ended up in
that junk baller, right? He just mystified our hitters.
Like, it's why, like, when I play like Immaculate Grid, I have a hard time sometimes. Like the other day, they had the Cubs and the Cardinals, and I know there's been a lot of guys that have played for both, but you're trying to find that diamond in the rough that nobody's picking. And Cubs and Cardinals were in the NL East together before it became the NL Central, and so they've always been rivals. And there's not that many guys. They're certainly not trading with each other that often. So it's the same thing here. I don't see the Reds trading a top, 2 or 3 starter in almost anybody's rotation within the division. I just don't see it.
I agree.
All right. Well, hey, we did it. We kept it just under an hour, Paul. Your maiden voyage on the Riverfront. Are you willing to come back again sometime, you think?
I'm willing. I'm not of all your other co-hosts, I'm probably the one with the least amount of knowledge of the current Reds. Like, if you want to talk about the 1988 Reds with Danny Jackson or even Mario Soto in the early 80s, I'd be more than happy to do that as well. Mario Soto, my favorite all-time Red.
Well, hey, the founder of the Riverfront, Chad Dotson, that's his favorite all-time Red as well.
That's right. I knew that.
So, hey, in 88, Danny Jackson was robbed by Oral Hershiser. He went 23-8 and did not win.
He did, and if it weren't for a historic year by Oral Hershiser, Danny Jackson would have won that Cy Young. He was masterful that year.
Yeah, and honestly, if it wasn't,
and he could hit.
That's true. If it wasn't for the inning streak, which was at the tail end of that season, right?
Right.
If that never happened, I really do wonder what would have happened if
kind of like when it's akin to college football when Doug Flutie made the Hail Mary pass against Miami in the Orange Bowl. That took the Heisman away from Keith Byers.
That is Keith Byers.
That's another show.
That's right. Well, hey, for Mario Soto and Danny Jackson and Luis Quinones, I am Seth Shaner, joined by Paul Barnes tonight. Please welcome him to the host group here on the Riverfront. And thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the 4th.